Okay, you want to do some dumb football questions for
Absolutely.
the road here? You guys can always hit us up. By the way, if you haven't already, click that like button and the subscribe button on the O-Line Committee YouTube channel. We got some other stuff in the works here behind the scenes that we're excited about that we're hoping to announce at some point. So looking to take O-Line Committee to the next level in 2025. But yeah, give us the best thing you guys can do is spread the word about the show. If you like it, tell your friends. Click that like button, the subscribe button on the O-Line Committee YouTube channel. And then on the audio side, Apple and Spotify, a 5-star rating and a positive review to help us grow there too. So I'm going to ask the first dumb football question. We had a bunch of different variations of this, so I will summarize it into one thing. If the NFLPA team report cards came out last week after we got done recording, and it graded every team in like 8 or 9 or 10 categories, from coach and owner all the way down to like treatment of families
Yeah.
and facilities
Food.
and things, food, weight room. The Dolphins, Vikings, Falcons, Raiders, and Chargers were all top 5. The Cardinals, Patriots, with their 1975 chartered plane with ashtrays and no Wi-Fi. The Browns, the Jets, and the Steelers were actually in the bottom 5. So my dumb football question is, what advice would you have as a former player and a current agent to the bottom 5 or 10 teams on this report card?
It's a weird thing because public pressure is amazing what can get done in the NFL, right? The public perception of your team when you're an owner or you're a coach, whatever, is pretty wild of how you can get mountains moved. For example, the Bengals locker room last year, bad. This year, they went in, redid it, brand new. I think they got an A+ on the locker room this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
Well,
So
I'm looking at only 5 categories here, but yeah.
the Bengals got in. They moved that needle, right? Kansas City, I think, got a new locker room this year. They moved the needle, right? And if I'm
A plus locker room, Bengals.
Yeah.
Nice job, guys.
right, and so if I'm an owner, I'm just gonna look at something and I go, I'm gonna fix one thing a year, right? I'm gonna fix one thing a year. Make the player develop better. Like, what's the most important? Like, what's the thing that I think is going to equate to wins and happier players and better free agency location, whatever it might be. I'm going, hey, one thing a year, I'm going to get it fixed. And if it's a simple thing, right? The treatment of families one was interesting to me, right? Because what that for me means, like, hey, where's the family room located after the game? Right? Hey, are you having the families around at all? Are you doing like Christmas parties, Halloween parties? Like, are things being hosted for families to come in and intermingle? Super easy fix. Super easy fix. I think that's where I would start because, as you know, Mackie, if mama ain't happy, ain't
Yeah.
no one happy, right? If you can get mama on board and you can get your significant other on board, everyone's going to be a lot happier all the time. So I'm starting with the fix the families first.
Bengals, they fixed their locker room A plus. They are an F minus on treatment of families somehow.
Yeah.
So let's pick
And
it
you
up.
never really know a team's like what that means, but if you had an F minus, that means like everyone on the team was not happy with some way, shape, or form of the families being treated.
Yeah. The Patriots team plane thing is hilarious.
The Bills are the same way. I think the Bills were F in travel too. And I remember when I got on my first Bills plane, I was looking at the seat and going, "What is that?" Right? And I'd flip it up and I'd flip it back down, and I was like, "Can't put a water? Is that like my AirPod holder?" And I was like, "Oh my god, it's an ashtray."
It's
I was like,
sick.
"That's an ashtray." Right? Like, wow, when was this plane made?
I feel like I was born in the mid '80s, and as I remember flying as like a 5 or 6 year old for the first time, and I think this is like maybe 1990. And I think maybe people could still smoke that. But that's like 35 years ago.
I don't remember smoking on a plane. I do remember going into like Applebee's or Chili's and asking smoking or non.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't matter. The whole restaurant smelled like smoke. But it was like, do you want to sit over here or do you want to sit over there? Or like, give me that cheeseburger. Right?
Oh man.
But it is fascinating. It's really interesting. I mean, I would have been. I'll tell
The
you
Dolphins
this.
are an A plus in almost every category.
Yeah.
The Dolphins, man. I mean, living in Miami, you're probably just happier anyway.
You see the sunshine every day.
Yeah,
I'll tell you this:
it's
if it was Winter Park, if these things came out before the Vikings moved into their new facilities, been a lot of Fs on that card.
great. So weight room would have been an F.
F.
The
Facility would have been F.
training
Like,
room
training
probably
room,
an F. Locker
probably
room
an
F.
Like no one. I mean, our meeting rooms, Mac. One of them only the heat worked, and one of them only the AC worked. right? So in OTAs in the summertime, you'd walk in and it'd be a gazillion degrees. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. And then you'd walk in the wintertime and it'd be like 45. And you'd be in like the back, like huddled like this in like a coat. And you'd be like, what are we doing? We're a $1 billion organization. Why is this not working? And it's because they knew they were leaving. And so they poured no money into the facility the last like 3 years. Things were just falling apart at the seams. I mean, you saw it. Our meeting room at Winter Park was like a curtained off corner of the indoor.
That was, I'm pretty sure that was also where like the press conference area was too.
It was a curtained off corner where we could only do red zone going one way in the indoor because 3/4 of our end zone on the other side was our team meeting room.
And wasn't the field house too? It wasn't high enough to do full punting.
Yeah,
drills
you couldn't
too?
punt in there because it would just smack the roof.
It's brutal. All right, let's go to King Kong NF9
on
here.
me.
Says we see plenty of autographed merchandise around the NFL, cards, helmets, whatever. My question to you guys is, where and when do players go to do autograph signings, and how long does it take for a session to finish?
Depends on the player. You know, a lot of times those memorabilia deals are done where it's like, hey, we're going to pay to bring you out here for a day, and you're going to sit in this room, and we're going to take pictures of you signing every single one of these items to authenticate it, right? And then we're going to pay you either per an autograph, per an hour, whatever it is on that front, and then move on with it. I know like card deals, sometimes they'll say, hey, we're going to send you 10,000 cards, 5,000 cards, whatever it is, and you'll get this much per an autograph, but you are not getting paid until we receive all of your autographs. Right, so then it depends on the player. How long does he want to sign it? How long does he want it to take? But he's not going to receive any money until he does.
Okay.
Right. Quick hit on this. It's fascinating you brought this up. I met a guy at the bar who showed me this idea that he had where he's creating a special type of pen and ink that you can authenticate the ink of the signature. And like they have this scanner that'll scan it and it'll say NFL signature, NBA signature, and it has this laser that goes across the ink, and the laser only lights up if it hits the ink, and that's how you'll be able to authenticate if it was the real authentic signature or not. Super fascinating stuff. The memorabilia world's weird. I've never understood it. Like I've never been a guy that's like a guy or like collecting memorabilia or anything like that. But there are dudes that pay unreal money for memorabilia.
So I definitely had a phase like high school and then in my 20s, cards, autographs. It was, and I would go buy autographs from different like shows and stuff. I wasn't like a wait in line for 5 hours. Although at one time I did, my dad, when I was a kid, took me, I waited in line 2 hours to get Willie Mays, a personally signed Willie Mays baseball, which is cool. But if you just think like existentially about the autograph world, here's a piece for a card, for instance, here's a piece of cardboard with your picture on it. Could you take a pen and scribble on it? And all of a sudden now it's like worth money. It's just a really kind of weird, fascinating.
Well, the thing I liked about this authentication thing is I was asking him, like, what's the point of this? He goes, the point of this and the way that we'll sell it to get the players to buy into it is now at every turn that something gets sold for them, royalties. They can get royalties off of it. Because that's what it is, right? You sign that thing one time and you never get it. It's gone to the world, right? It's gone to the internet. But if
it's
you
like
can
an
have,
NFT then, basically.
if you can have something that can authenticate and say, no, this was mine, you can then track it as it gets sold, and then you can get a rollover for your piece every single time it gets sold. I love that idea. I think it's a genius idea.
Even as a non-collector, I think you and then the audience, I think it's Netflix, Golden Auctions. So I can't remember the guy's first name, but his last name is Golden, and he has built essentially the world's premier merchandise and collectibles trading platform, auction platform. You know, he'll go to think about the most famous people in sports, the Jerry Rices and whoever, and say, hey, I'd love to raid your personal collection. You get X percentage of it, but we'll put it up for $2 million and some rich guy with a sweet man cave can buy it. And it's, dude, and with baseball cards now too, there are YouTube channels devoted to people just opening up boxes of sports cards to see if they can hit, some sort of
Pokemon cards, cards. People are nuts. I don't know. I mean, listen, I got my own vices, but that is not one of them.
Yeah, you like dance competitions.
Yeah.
Is what your vice is.
Dance competitions, steakhouses.
Yes. Let's go to. Okay, this is a good one for you here, Nick Correa, who always asks good questions in the comment section. Dumb football question for Agent Jeremiah. On a scale of 1 to 10, how dumb is it to have your mom act as your agent? We've seen that. I mean, Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think when you don't have like accurate, like this person's my NFLPA certified agent, really all you're saying is like, no, my mom's going to field my calls and then I'll have my lawyers and the rest of my teams look over the dot the I's, cross the T's type of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, sitting in these meetings this week, I don't know how, unless, I mean, for a rookie top 5 pick, okay, I kind of get it, right? Like it's going to be slotted. There's obviously some language in the contract that you're going to want to read through and make sure is right, but there's not a ton of negotiation that goes into these rookie contracts, right? There's a little bit, but a lot of it's slotted. But when you hit free agency, man, listening to these meetings and how things are structured and the things you got to look for when are payment dates, when are out clauses, when are this, like, I feel like you wouldn't want to deal with that as a player, right? That's why you pay an agent. Like that's where you protect yourself. You want professionals doing these things, right? And it's not just about fielding calls and feeling respected. It's the business side of the NFL, contract negotiations. You're going against unbelievably high paid lawyers that work for these teams that are going to try and slip a date in there that all of a sudden is different from the previous year, that if you don't catch, you're now setting a new precedent, right? There was a couple things like that in the agent meeting this year. It's like, hey, this happened last year on a couple things. Teams are going to see this. They're going to try and make this the new precedent, right? It's our job as agents to catch that stuff or to work with the PA and catch that stuff, right? I really do feel like that's not a good position to put yourself in as a player, just because you're leaving yourself up and for tons of exposure from the team if they get something by on you.
I would think like the negotiating part is the most awkward, because don't you want to maintain a little distance between the team that you're maybe going to play for and
Yes.
then like because their inherent goal is to pay you
as
little money
possible.
as possible within the market, and your goal is to fight them on that and
Maximize
make
it.
more. Like baseball has this crazy process, this arbitration process,
yeah.
where you literally for like 3 years of your rookie contract, you go to, if it gets to arbitration, you go to a courtroom and you fight the team and the agency fight about what the player should make.
And then
So
the
it
judge
could be
rules.
like a start.
And then
yeah.
the judge rules. It's wild.
And then you need to know, okay, is that judge analytically inclined? Do I need to pitch like the real deep stats, or is he more of a surface level guy? But I don't know. Yeah, to your point. Also, what percentage of NFL contracts are like pretty boilerplate versus super customized? And
They're all customized, right? You have the boilerplate like that everyone signs, right? It's got everything in it that you need, the media clauses, the termination clauses, but then every team has the addendums. And that's where everything starts to differ team to team of things that they want to put in that's unique to that team that are very rarely uniform. Right. And that's where, as an agent, you kind of read through the boilerplate stuff, make sure nothing's crazy. Then when you get to the addendum, it's like, okay, buckle in, really comb through this, make sure there's nothing different here. And that's where you can really start to be some different, like offset language or, hey, clarification. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Pretty vague language, right? Let's make this more pinpointed. Injury waivers is another one, right? Injury waivers is a big one because teams like to, I'll give an example. Hey, this guy's knee, we want to waive the whole knee, right? It's like, well, not his entire knee isn't bad, right? Like, let's narrow the scope here of what's wrong with the knee. And like our job as an agent is, hey, let's make that as minimal as possible. Like, hey, his left meniscus we're waiving, right? Now we didn't waive the ACL, or we didn't waive the patellar tendon, or like we had a team's like, hey, we want to waive his hip. It's like, well, what happens if someone breaks his hip bone, right? That is technically the hip, right? So our job is to try and narrow that down way much. The team's job is trying to protect themselves and make it as wide as humanly possible. It's like, well, at that point, just waive the body, right? Like his heart. Oh, okay. Like, oh, his heart stopped. Put it on the waiver, right? Like that's all stuff too that you have to be careful about. And if you don't really know what you're looking for, you can be like, oh, I guess that makes sense.
And there's dumb question off that. If a team waives someone's left meniscus and then your player tears his left meniscus, does that mean that he's not eligible for any sort of? They can just cut him,
yeah,
without paying him, basically.
Yeah. So the injury waivers, what teams do is it's when they believe that there's a pre-existing condition on that player before they arrive to that team. right? So it happens with guys in the pre-draft process, right? It also happens with guys in second contract time where it's like, hey, this dude had multiple knee issues, or hey, he had a knee surgery when he was with this team. Now we want to give him to our team. Our docs look at it and go, hey, that ACL it's hanging on, right? It's not great. It's hanging on and it's a risk. It's not a big enough risk for us not to want to sign him, but we need to protect ourselves as an organization in saying that, hey, if he tears this ACL, we don't have to pay him his paragraph 5 salary because we're saying that it was not our fault. It was on its way out when he got here. And that's their way of protecting themselves against those pre-existing type of injuries. It's really muddy. It gets really sticky. And it's where you're going to want an agent to be able to try and work through that stuff, and you can get it thrown out or you can get the scope narrowed, but a lot of it just depends on how much leverage you have, right? Is it a top tier guy? If you're a top tier guy, right? If I'll put it this way, if Trey Smith has a little wear on his meniscus on the outside, they don't care, right? They're not going to put an injury waiver on that. If you're a lower tier coming in on a minimum salary and benefits veteran type guy, and you've got a pretty bum knee or a bum ankle or something like that.
Like when Boone went back to the Seahawks after a year off.
That's a great example.
They're like,
a great example.
Your leg looks like it's actually disconnected from your body. So
you're going into year 10. Your knee makes this weird inverted shape that's not supposed to. If you want to play, you sign this. If you don't, cool, we'll send you home. Right? That's usually how it just really depends on the amount of leverage that you have.